Hi everyone, my name is Pablo José Ramírez. I am a curator at the Hammer Museum, and we are here now in the exhibition Several Eternities in a Day, Form in the Age of Living Materials.
I'm Jessi DiTillio. I'm a curatorial assistant here at the Hammer Museum. We're excited to walk you guys through.
This is an exhibition that it's exploring the relationship between living materials and contemporary art. And when we say living materials, we're thinking on everything that is alive, everything that changes, that ferments, that mutates, that crumbles, that bleeds. And the thesis of the exhibition is basically that if everything around us, our bodies, nature, our communities change, why shouldn't art change as well? And we believe that contemporary art is changing because artists like the ones in this show are really pushing the boundaries of the practice.
So the title, Several Eternities in a Day, comes from a line from the Chilean poet Nicanor Parra. The poem itself is about these different scales of time. So sometimes time can slow down to a sort of snail's pace. Sometimes it speeds up, and you're going to experience all of these different scales of time throughout the exhibition.
The first installation you see here is by Maya Cachiquel artist Edgar Calel. Edgar is a very special artist working in Comalapa, very active around the world, and Edgar most of the time work with big installation, large pieces containing different organic materials. In this case, what we see here are a number of rocks that are all sourced in Los Angeles area, and then the artists perform a ceremony using animal blood. Also, just to say, there was no animal sacrifice for this. This is a piece that speaks about memory, about ancestral knowledge, and also about our connection to the earth and in general, to nature. What you see on the walls is a mural that is representing the mountains in the Guatemalan highlands in Comalapa. The artists speak about not painting, but actually letting the natural dyes drip down. So there is this kind of sense of letting materials do their own thing, have their own agency. In this sense, the artists are co-creators with the materials they use.
And we really envisioned this show as kind of a multi-sensory experience. Edgar painted the mural on the walls with aromatic herbs. So as it was first installed, it had this really beautiful smell. And as you walk through the show, you'll smell, experience dirt, avocado, soil, all sorts of things that are beyond the purely visual.
And here we have Carmen Argote. Carmen lives in Boyle Heights. She's been very active in the contemporary art scene in Los Angeles and beyond. These are two avocado paintings. They are these monumental pieces. They are decaying through the course of this exhibition. So at the end of the exhibition, the pieces will be most likely be destroyed. And well, that's the purpose of the piece in a way. In order to create these pieces, the artists first intervene the paper with cochineal, then covered the paper with avocado, with the fruit, and then with her fingers she would perform this sort of movement that in the end it can only be done once. So the paintings have this very performative quality. You can see the movement of her fingers here, and there is this kind of almost choreography of the painting. If you see closely, the painting is changing, there are cracks, but also it's been dripping avocado oil for some weeks. That's why we have here at the bottom this platform, so we could retain the oil. So again, the idea of these works is that they are, in a way, living works. They change and they degrade through the course of the exhibition.
The base layer, you can see this kind of vibrant, beautiful red. That's created by combining cochineal, which is a natural dye made from grinding up dried beetles, so also very much a living material. And she mixes the cochineal with lemon juice, which creates this kind of chemical reaction that's really unpredictable. And so you can see the color is really variable all over the paintings depending on the kind of strength and acidity and what happened in the chemical reaction. One of the themes that we're exploring in the show is the way that artists collaborate with unpredictable materials. And so how do these living materials affect the artistic process when the artist can't necessarily control everything about how the final work will come out?
So across the exhibition, we have a number of commissions by Diné music composer Raven Chacon. Raven is the first Native American on winning the Pulitzer Prize for music composition. And what we did was to ask Raven to produce a sound piece per each of the sections in the show. So at the very beginning of the show, you would hear or feel the vibrations emanating from one of the walls. That's Raven Chacon's piece, and then here we are kind of crossing this threshold in the first section of the show where we can hear the wave sound, which is also a piece by Raven Chacon. To our right, this is Guadalupe Maravilla, a Salvadorian American artist working with notions of healing, building these incredible performative sculptures that are activated in different moments. They were activated for the opening by Guadalupe. And well, Guadalupe has been exploring also ideas on memory and trauma, and also how art can help not only artists, but the community to heal. And well, that draws from his own history as an immigrant.
This is an installation by Patricia Dominguez, an artist based in Chile. She went to Hunter College, so she was in New York for graduate school, and she actually studied botanical illustration at the same time at the New York Botanical Gardens. So close observation of plants is really important to her work. But in the process of really studying plants and botanical illustration closely, she started to have something of a spiritual awakening and wanted to explore sort of beyond the material, the biological qualities of plants, what are also the sort of energetic qualities of plants. So the installation includes both this series of incredible watercolors, but also some actual healing plant materials on these shelves. She's included several feathers from the tiyuke bird, which is kind of like a hawk based in South America. And then there are these living roses. So these were fresh roses at the beginning of the installation. But part of course, the nature of living materials is that they will decay and wilt. And we wanted to show the entire course of change to the roses over the course of the exhibition.
So this is Nereida Lopez, an artist based in the Amazonian region of Peru in a small town called Pebas. Nereida is an incredible sculptor known for this very particular language around the use of local materials, most of them organic. Everything is dyed with natural dyes. And well, Nereida has a very interesting approach to sculpture in the sense that every sculpture would sort of create its own language. And even though all of the materials are sourced in Pebas, each of the sculptures speak to different sort of entities, Amazonian mythology, storytelling. So they feel a little whimsical, but also there is a lot of ancestral knowledge and sort of like also speaks to the connection of the artist to its local environment. And here we are closing the first section of the exhibition, which is called Breeding, Bleeding, Crumbling Forms. And we're moving into the second section, opening with a film by Sky Hopinka. This is the only film we have in this section. So the second section is called Cosmic Abstraction and Communal Form. And in here, we're gonna see mostly works on paper and paintings, with the only exception of Sky Hopinka. With this section, we wanted to explore the idea that image making can be also affected or influenced by the materials the artist used. So again, we go back to the idea of living materials, by using natural dyes, or for instance, by artists engaging with, in this case, tree bark, which is Santiago Yahuarcani's piece of the Yanchama tree. Santiago is also from the Amazonian region in Peru, from Pebas. We really wanted to highlight how is that even though we're thinking about flat surfaces here, there is a level of complexity in how the surface is shown. Like in this case, you can see the fiber of the canvas, you can see how the tree bark really absorbs the natural dyes in a different way. So you kind of accomplish different levels of depth within the color, almost like velvet in some cases. And again, like you will see different scales within these three paintings of Santiago Yahuarcani. Again, he's working on tree bark. He needs to, in some cases, stitch together the pieces. So he will work with sometimes very uneven canvases. This is not the case, but in some cases canvases are even bigger, and he always stitches different pieces. And some of the pieces will be thicker than others, so it's just part of this idea that the artist simply doesn't control everything, and some things are contingent on the materials, because the materials in this case have a will of their own. On that side, this is Esteban Cabeza de Vaca, an incredible artist based in New York, working also with landscape painting. In this case, we thought that the relationship between Esteban and Sky Hopinka, both working with different mediums, but both thinking about landscape abstraction, was quite powerful.
So even though many of the painters in this section are working with more traditional materials, like Esteban uses acrylic, he's also incorporating natural dyes into the underpainting. So if you look closely at this work, you'll see he's using this kind of indigo tie-dye on the canvas underneath, painting the landscape painting on top, and then peeling the painting away to kind of reveal the natural dye underneath in this spiral pattern. Each of the sections of the exhibition features one historical artist. So most of the artists in this show are contemporary living artists, but we've got 4 historical artists. The artist for this section is Mary Sully. She was a Yankton, Dakota artist who was working in the 1930s and 40s. And she made over 130 of these colored pencil triptychs that are really a kind of extraordinary early example of indigenous modernism. This wall features an artist named Shero Anawe Hakihiwe, also an Amazonian artist, but he's in Venezuela, near the border of Venezuela and Brazil. And he's another artist that really represents, like Mary Sully, an innovative approach to abstraction. And so he is doing these really close, detailed daily observations of natural elements around him in the Amazon. Each of these works is named for a particular natural element. So like fungus, certain types of plants, leaves, snakes, all the elements that he's observing in his daily life, and yet they have this really beautiful, reduced, and very contemporary abstract visual language.
And something important to mention about this section is how artists working with painting or works on paper like Sheronawe or Mary Sully are really thinking, well, as Jessi mentioned, about observation. So the idea of observation and connection to your surroundings and to your community is essential in order to think of what we're calling cosmic abstraction, which is, basically registering philosophical ideas or cosmogonic knowledge through painting, through image making. Jaider Esbel here, this acrylic painting, the diptych, and this piece is Jaider Esbel, very important Brazilian artist, mentor to many artists. He was a curator as well. He was very close to Edgar Calel, the first artist we saw at the beginning of this exhibition with the rocks, the big installation. In these 3 pieces, Jaider is working with Genipapo, which is a natural plant used for ceremonial purposes. In many cases, it is used also for skin painting, and there is this idea of, how ceremonial practice of skin painting also connects to the spirits, and that will kind of like tell you for how long the ink will stay in your skin. This is a very performative piece, as you can see. It was probably not meant to be shown at the very beginning. It is two-sided, and it was first sort of performed by the artists in an International Congress on Indigenous Contemporary Art in Brazil. And then if we move to the next section, we will find the last one, which is called Clay and the Manifestation of Form. Here we really wanted to engage with clay as a medium and think really on not only on the potentialities of clay and ceramics, but also to think on what artists are doing to push the boundaries of the medium itself. So we will have some very well-known artists like Rose B. Simpson here in this kind of chapel-like installation. We knew we wanted the wall a little darker, and we built this installation because, there is this idea of Rose, of her pieces as ancestors, but also the idea of kind of honoring the pieces in this way. It felt important. Most of Rose's work, or at least the most known work, is large-scale sculpture. So in this case, we decided to have a selection of smaller bases from different periods as well. And we commissioned also a couple of pieces that are in this installation, and this beautiful wall piece.
The works in this corner here are by one of the younger artists in the exhibition, Ayla Tavares. She's a Brazilian artist, and these pieces in particular are meant to be interacted with. They're called the sonantes works. And so each of these orifices is meant to kind of receive and produce sound. So if you come to see the show in person, you can blow into the work and have somebody or whisper into sort of the holes in the work and have somebody listen to how it sounds. We also produced this piece called an always humid form. So in this work, the entire clay sculpture is soaking in an aquarium full of water. And there's actually wet, unfired clay in the center of the piece, which is slowly dissolving over time.
This is Francisco Toledo, a very important artist from Oaxaca. He's one of our historical references and is the one anchoring the ceramic section. This is also representing Xoloscuintle, which is this pre-colonial, pre-Hispanic dog, and is associated with, in like kind of contemporary sense, with a kind of like affirmation of Mexicanness. Mythologically, the Xoloscuintle was seen as this entity that would connect us to the underworld. So this idea of passage also felt important in this case, and that's why we also have the Xoloscuintle in the corner and just very high as like a guardian. And finally, we have a commission by Raven Chacon. Raven is the artist I mentioned before. He produced 3 pieces per each of the sections in this exhibition. The floor is covered in sand, and then you have this seating kind of like surrounding the whole gallery space. Our intention was for people to find a moment of rest and to actually engage in, let's say, active listening.
The piece is called Night Sky. The artist talked about the grains of the sand being a way of kind of mimicking the infinity of stars in the sky. So you can kind of look down at the sand and look up at the darkness and the lights above you in the space and get this sort of experience of infinity that the artist is seeking to evoke with the work. So the show is up until August 23rd, and as you can see, it's a really experiential show. So you have to come see it in person. You can interact with the works. You can hear all the sound fully and discover it for yourself.
It's an exhibition that we thought as a living exhibition that will change, over the 5 months that it's on view. So you should come not only once, more than that, because you will probably see things different. Everyone is invited.